Hey, it's Jimmy Vreeland from Vreeland Capital, and thank you for listening to That Real Estate Tech Guy.
I can tell you one thing. Technology is the single most important aspect of every business that has successfully scaled.
It's time for That Real Estate Tech Guy. It's your weekly chance to explore how technology can help your real estate business explode. Each week, you'll hear from real estate investors who have been there and done that and find out their favorite technology tips. Listen in as Jordan speaks with tech companies and learns about new technologies and new ideas that will help you scale your business. And now, join your host, Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of Smartphone, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan Samuel Fleming here with another episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy, and I am delighted that my co-pilot for today's episode is Jimmy Vreeland from Vreeland Capital. Jimmy, thanks for joining us on the podcast. How about you give a little introduction to yourself and your business?
Sure. So, Jordan, I run a turnkey wholesaling company out of St. Louis, Missouri. We're about 50-50 wholesale, 50-50 turnkey. We manage over 600 units. And we have a real estate education platform called Cashflow Tactics, which helps us generate and educate our turnkey buyers.
Fantastic. Well, I was excited to get you on the program today because I had in season 1 I had a chance to speak to Scott Corbett on one of the episodes, and he spoke very highly of yourself and your operation. And you know, one of the main goals of this podcast is to sort of dive in with different investors to talk a bit about their journey with technology and how it's really been a part of them scaling up a business. So can you give us just a little history of how your the real estate business has developed over the years?
My real estate business or the real estate in general?
Yours.
Yes. So I used to be in the Army, and when I was in Iraq, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I've been buying rentals since 2005. I bought about 2 a year for 10 years till 2015. 2015, I learned how to raise private money, and so I bought 60. So at that point, I had like 80 units, no team, no process, no system. A weekend side hustle turned into a low-paying part-time job in real estate. 2017, luckily, I met my business partners, Cashflow Tactics, and they told me about turnkey and that investors were looking for fully occupied rentals. So 2017, we kind of pivoted into turnkey. Then 2018, we sold over 100 turnkeys. 2019, we ran low on inventory, so we had to figure out how to do wholesaling and acquire for ourselves. Then, thank God, 2020, 21, 2022, we have not added any business lines. We just keep trying to perfect our systems, perfect our process. But as far as the technology growth, we took a major step at the beginning of this year in converting to Smartphone and converting to Salesforce for our wholesaling business.
So you guys, obviously, you know, the jump to a system like Salesforce, you know, to manage the wholesaling business, that's a phenomenal jump in terms of visibility and how you can track everything. What before Salesforce, you know, I mean, you said you started out and you really kind of grew just yourself, but before Salesforce, what were you using to manage things? Because that's a lot of units.
Yeah, so we use Rent Manager to do the property management business. We use Builder Trend for the construction part, and then we use Salesforce for wholesaling. And we still use Podio to kind of get construction and property management to talk to each other.
Okay, so you were on a Podio system, and you've got a bit of stuff there still, but now you're inside Salesforce, and I presume that's left main REI.
Correct.
Fantastic. Yep. So, I mean, just in terms of, so how many people are in the team in the real estate team right now?
Between everybody and VAs, 25 people. 25
people. So managing. You know, I always say that when you start to scale a business with any amount of people, it's pretty easy to do things when it's just you and maybe another person. You can kind of do things loose and see how it goes. With that many people, visibility, transparency, tracking things is critical. So, I mean, what what has been the biggest sort of change as you've developed your system and you've grown as a staff in terms of you as the owner? What has been your biggest kind of takeaways?
Understanding the importance of coordinating action. I'm a student of a guy named Larry Yach. I used to be an Army Ranger. He was a Navy SEAL, but he has a full business coaching planning called SEAL Team Leaders. And he impressed upon me, like everybody thinks deploying and being in like a special forces team is like complete misery, right? But the phenomenon...
That's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, but the phenomenon for everybody on the team is like they're having the time of their life. And Larry kind of pointed out to me, like, the reason I enjoyed the Ranger Regiment was because we were doing very difficult things in very bad environments, but we were coordinating action very well together. And that is fun. And so in the civilian world, in the small business world, if you're not coordinating action together, I've had days like these. Business just feels like Groundhog Day. It's like you wake up, you put out fires, and you go to bed exhausted. You do it over. And then you hire employees thinking you get relieved, and it's just harder because you're not coordinating action correctly.
Yeah, so you're adding problems.
Yeah, you're adding complexity without the way it's been described to me by Larry is that information inside your business is like it's blood. So instead of hiring a CEO, which a lot of people do, or an integrator, if you're familiar with EOS, I hired a coordination of action officer. And so that person's job is to make sure the software systems are functioning correctly, that different parts of the business are communicating with each other, and that no one's just working in a silo. And technology combined with someone dedicated to coordinate action, it is a game-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny? It's funny you say that because over the course of the last 15, 20 years that I've been working with different companies, I've actually had the opportunity to work with a number of veteran-owned businesses. And, I was curious as to how that would be. But one of the things that I discovered is, for the most part, people who have been on the ground and working inside a military organization, their ability to deal with structure is really, really great, and their ability to not deal with structure is not so good. And so what you end up getting, if it goes well, you end up getting a group of people who kind of, you say, hey, we want to make this change. Everyone as long as everybody understands it, it is the easiest change you'll ever make, because if they understand it, they just fly with it. Yeah. In a way that I've not seen in many other businesses. Does that chime? Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to always have a mission statement. You got to always have, so you got to have I went on, we'll call it 200 missions, but with the time I was deployed, every mission I went on, I had a mission statement and I had the commander's intent. And the theory is that, freeborn Americans operating, knowing a mission and knowing the commander's intent, if everybody on the mission were to die, that lone survivor can still operate, because whereas, we're going to go get a little political here, if you have an army of a dictator who they can't make decisions, they're not free individuals, they can't make decisions.
Yeah, it falls apart, right?
Yeah, so what I've had to bring into business is articulate a clear mission statement and then a clear desired end state, so that, let's say everybody slept past their alarm and the lowest person on our team is still working, they know what to do.
That's fantastic. I'm not going to get into the weeds with this. I am actually weirdly reading a book right now called Commander, which is all about, its subtitle is How the Allies Learned to Win World War II. And it's all about the learning that particularly the British and the European forces had to do to figure out how to transition from a World War I mindset to a World War II mindset. And it's a lot to do with decentralizing command and making sure that people, as you said, if everybody knows what they're trying to achieve and everybody knows the goal where they're getting to, you've got an ability to react to whatever's happening in a way that they didn't have in World War I, where they were waiting to hear what the guy had to say who was 20 miles behind. And it's like, Jesus, by the time it gets here, we're screwed. So
right. No, that's I'm gonna check out that book.
I'll send you the link to it. I don't want to get into the weeds on that one, but I'll send you the link to it. It's written by a British comedian who's a military historian as well, and it is phenomenal. I'll send it to you after the show.
Awesome, man.
It's a great read. So let me ask, I mean, in terms of, because 25 people is a lot of people, so presumably for the wholesaling side and for that kind, you've got, dedicated teams for acquisitions, for, transaction coordination, dispo, and et cetera. In terms of, your operations specialist, the person who is in charge of making kind of it all work, do you have a sense of where some of the key visibility points that the systems bring to them that they wouldn't be able to do without it?
Yeah, dashboards, scoreboards and dashboards, like number one. Like that was the main reason we switched to Salesforce is the ability to dashboard and scoreboard. My team, I got three other, of that 25, I think 5 are veterans, and most of my team is also former athletes. So we don't play games where we don't keep score, and so keeping score in Google Sheets is tough.
Yeah, very manual.
Yeah, so I would say the automation is very important, but reporting is where I find the most value. And
in terms of one of the things that I always think is as you're scaling up, the moment you start getting more moving parts in a business and you start, you add people, you add departments, you add processes, you add systems, it all becomes a much more complex engine. And so the passing off between people, the passing off between a VA doing some cold calling to an acquisition specialist internally who then passes it on to transaction, etc., that becomes very critical. So have you found that the transition to Salesforce has also allowed you to do a more transparent and better kind of integration across your teams? Is that something that's been a focus as well?
I'd say the immediate effect has been felt in our follow-up process.
In the follow-up to leads that you've been working on?
Yeah.
Okay, and so can you just expand a bit on that in terms of how is the technology helping you to do a better follow-up process?
Just so my guys wake up, they open up their computer, they know we did a good job of putting a very good follow-up process together. So they open up their computer and they know who they got to follow up with that day, and it's just automated. And then I was in corporate sales for 8 years. If you're keeping your CRM of your hot customers and your follow-ups in your head, like you will fail. And you can't hold anybody accountable if you don't have it in the CRM.
Absolutely. Let me ask you another question. So in terms of your, you said you had VAs. Presumably, there's a lot of VA action on the start of the funnel from a lead acquisition, whether it's cold calling or dealing with the unqualified, right? The people you don't necessarily want to waste your internal.
The urgent but not important.
The urgent, but okay. So let me ask you, in terms of, one thing that I always am keen to understand is how people are using. I mean, you said you use Salesforce and you use smartphone. Obviously, one of the key benefits of having an integrated phone and CRM is that the recordings and everything gets logged in your CRM. Do you have a process internally for quality assurance, like from making sure that the VAs are following the right methods in terms of how they're speaking on the phones or how they're following your process?
Have you had Eric Brewer on this podcast yet?
No, I sent him. Funny enough, I sent him an email this morning. I was recommended to by Darren Dami.
Yeah, so Darren really squared away our Salesforce. They helped us get it up and going in 60 days. It was awesome. But we're in the collective genius together. And so we have verbatim copied everything Brewer puts out. And Brewer teaches a great process where we hired a scoreboard VA who part of their job is just to spot check calls and then a scoring system on those calls. We're trying... Steve Trang is putting out something where that automates. They've been talking about doing it for a while, but it is not ready for prime time yet. But that is where we'll go eventually with it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I had a conversation today with a company who wants to integrate into smartphone that's an artificial intelligence system that can listen to the calls and identify the themes and score.
Is it Liberty AI? Is that it? Anyway, that's another reason we switched to smartphone.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, and we're trying to decide what to do about that right now. Which one to bring in, and how we want to make sure we get the right product for you guys.
So as an owner, like, I just sleep well at night knowing that our calls are getting listened to.
And it's critical because not enough people, I always think, not enough people are actually spot checking calls and figuring out, our people are, you could go 3 months and not realize how much money has been left on the table by people not performing well. So
Correct.
Do they spot check every day or every week?
I would say a couple times a week. It's not like every call gets listened to, but it's like 2 spot checks a week.
That's fantastic. That's a really great system for particularly VAs who are not necessarily in the office with you. Yeah. That's a really great one.
Well, we spot check everybody, regardless of VA or not, just because we're constantly trying to get better.
So it's a constant method of improvement. You're spot checking and seeing where there may be things you can incremental improvements across everybody, essentially, right?
Correct.
Fantastic. And in terms of, I know that you work closely with, I think Scott. I was speaking to Scott about you earlier in last season. In terms of the way you guys are working your different marketing sources and assessing what's working and what's not. That's something that I think a lot of people get a bit worried about when they start spending, particularly if they're newer to the game, they start spending serious money on marketing. How do you guys, measure the different marketing spends that you do and the way, and how successful they are?
Yeah, so our target for any dollar we spend on marketing is a 4-to-1 return. So, that's another great part about Salesforce is we got the ROI calculator. So, and then if you're new and you're just like about to get ready to do a big mail drop, I empathize with you. It sucks the first time you write that check, the first time you do TV. So if we're not getting a 4-to-1 return, something's wrong, either with inbound or sales, so it just is a trigger to us to start examining what's going on. But also just have the expectation that sometimes mail's been as good as 7-to-1. Sometimes it's only been 3-to-1, but it's always averaging out as 4-to-1. And Jason Lewis teaches this, but have the expectation that you're going to have 2 legs that you stand on for marketing. Right now for us, it's TV and it's mail. It used to be just text and mail. So we fully expect things to go up and down seasonally. And we're just always keeping an eye on it. And as long as it's around that 4-to-1, we'll keep spending. But if it starts dropping 3-to-1, we're going to cut our spend. It's not a fire and forget. It's something you have to be constantly monitoring.
And presumably as well, it's one of those things that I always tell people that, you can't, and particularly if you're starting out and you're terrified writing that first check, as you say, right? You really don't want to part with that amount of money. You do have to give it a certain period of time to actually properly judge these things. You can't, it's not one of those things that usually you can say, right, I'm going to write this check, and if it doesn't pay off in a week, it hasn't been successful. You got to give it room to breathe, right?
Mail,
in this,
mail, TV was a little faster, but mail was 90 days. We didn't get anything for 90 days.
Wow, 90 days. God, that must have been nerve-wracking, eh? I mean, 90 days would be nerve-wracking, particularly if you're spending money, thinking to yourselves, oh my God, if I just wasted all this cash. Yeah. How were you able to determine that it was the inbound process that was laying you down?
It was just a process. Like, we're not hitting 4-to-1. Okay, let's check the chain. What's our response rate? Okay, our response rate was 0.5, was industry standard. What was our conversion to appointments? Industry standard. What was our close rate? It was like 10%. Okay, industry standard for closing is 25. Got to sharpen your sales skills. And then we've had other months where closing was you just follow the chain. We've had other months where like, hey, our close rate's 30%, but we're not doing any more deals. What up the chain? Where are we losing stuff?
And that's also, I mean, that's a great. You could take that over to the ability to look at metrics inside your CRM. I feel like a lot of people sometimes invest in a CRM and then don't really bother with really looking at the data they can get out of it. They sort of treat it like a glorified address book instead of a business intelligence system, right? I mean, have you seen that as you've grown with your CRMs from a you by yourself to you and a couple other people to 25 people, have you become more reliant and more trusting on the fact that you've got good data?
Yes, and then that helps you sleep at night. So then, you ever take the Colby test?
No.
It's a test. It's a personality test that just it's how you like to solve problems, right? And you got fact finder, which are people who are really detail oriented. You got implementer, you got quick start, and I'm forgetting the fourth one, but I'm like a 10 quick start. So I like to solve problems by just running with my gut, right? And that's great to get snowballs rolling, but when you're trying to run a sophisticated business, it's bad because I have the tendency to be like, something's wrong, I just must fire everyone. No, let's back up and say, what's wrong with the process? So you got to have data to see if your process is working.
Absolutely. And that's also a thing. I think there's a transition you make as you scale your business into really understanding, running a business with Smartphone, we've got about 40 people now. And so, running a business, but 25 people, 40 people, whatever, is a world away from 4. It's not even in the same ballpark. And it's only when you start scaling a business that you really see the need for the process and the systems and the people and the culture to meld together, right?
You want to hear a funny story about process? So it was probably 2019. We were at the point where we were really scaling. And then I was at the Collective Genius, and Tennessee homebuyer Jeremy Fish did a presentation and showed everybody his level of process, level of detail. And I'm like a sales guy. I'm like a cowboy. I just I like running off adrenaline. I used to hate system and process. And so I sat in my hotel room that night and my wife was there with me. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to get that process heavy because it's not fun. I'm a 35-year-old man at the time. I shouldn't be that immature. But so then we made the commitment to become a process-oriented company. And I legitimately, this is the closest we've ever gotten to getting divorced. I legitimately just followed her around and said, and then what do you do? And then what do you do? And,
oh, my God.
But that's how we drilled out our processes. And now we don't operate without it. Now I can't imagine running a business without it. But that conversion is almost as bad as Afghanistan. I would say that. It sucked.
Well, and actually, to your credit, as someone with your personality type, you're probably. I don't use your test. I've always dealt with the expressive, driver, analytic, amiable quadrant.
The PI.
And so I suspect you and I are both on the expressive side.
Yeah.
In a real big way. And it's not normally an expressive in an expressive trait to be able to make that change and get into a mindset of actually thriving with process and structure. So it's actually to your credit that you did that. And now that you have a business the size you do, it is the only thing that'll let you sleep. Because otherwise,
it's not fair to. It's also not fair to team members to give them responsibility without a process.
Absolutely. Let me ask you just before we head into the fast 5 questions. In terms of implementing systems, I find the other part of this is as you scale a business and you go from 2 or 3 people up to 10 or 15. Particularly for the people who've been there. There's a sort of it can be constraining. I used to have the freedom to do this, and now I have to do this. And that's a process you have to manage. What has been as you've scaled up your team, obviously the later it is, the easier it is. But how have you found the implementing of systems and getting it consistent? Was it easy from the start, or did you have to sort of find the best way of bringing these things in and getting it to live with your business?
Oh no, it's hell on earth.
It's fantastic.
It's like you got kids, Jordan?
Yeah, 2 of them.
The only way I can express it is like being a parent. Like right now, I'm heavily involved with my 10-year-old boy's baseball, and like I gotta tell him, bring your glove to the game, have your water, like, and then we're not even talking about getting on the field. Of keep your glove down in the dirt, step directly at the pitcher, like keep your head on the ball, like all the cool, fun baseball stuff. Like you don't even get there. You do that 10% of the time. And so systems, processes, like especially when you're in the beginning, it's like 9-year-old baseball. It's, the first year your kids play baseball.
I actually live in Poland.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm in Europe right now. So my kids don't play baseball. They're into climbing and running.
Well, like the first year of kid pitch baseball is miserable. Like every kid walks, there's no action. And so that's what it's going to feel like when you implement systems and processes. But it's so worth it for when your kid's like 11 and hits his first home run.
Run.
And so
I bet.
it's like, that's how I would adopt. It's like something you have to do if you want to be great. So just you got to suck it up and do it, and then you see the benefits later.
And the truth of the matter is, there's not a single way you're going to scale a proper business without that. There's no business is of any scale and capability of is going to be able to function without a rigorous process and system. It's just chaos otherwise. So
well, it's not.
If you want,
it's not fair to your team members, and it's also not fair to your employees. Like I came to the conclusion on the turnkey side that I don't sell houses; I sell a process, and like. I can only guarantee you that my process will be followed. Like I can only guarantee you that we'll do these inspections, and we'll have these rehabs because that's our process. And then we'll do this in property management. And then if you're buying our process, you're not buying a house.
Just before I go to the fast 5 questions as well, just quickly, obviously you're coaching. Can you give us a little insight into, the coaching itself and also how people can find it so that I can put it in the website?
Sure. So it's cashflowtactics.com. We work with small business owners, W-2 employees who are making a couple $100,000 a year, and they've always been curious of investing in real estate. We actually have people who are wholesaling clients because wholesalers are essentially traders. They're not investing in long-term assets. And especially since they're real estate professionals, they have to hold on to long-term assets because you can do your advanced cost seg and depreciation. Pretty much every $100,000 of real estate you buy, you get $12,000 in taxes. And especially as well as wholesaling has been going the last 2 years, like definite need for that. So we take a comprehensive approach to building wealth at Cashflow Tactics. So we give you a tax plan. Most small business owners, we cut their taxes in half. Then we give an asset reallocation asset plan. And so the goal is for people to be financially free in 10 years or less with us.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to make sure I get that information into the notes, into the website as well, so that everyone can see it. We're just going to close out with the fast 5. These are 5 questions I ask every investor, just so that I can get this variety of I can see the different ways people approach it. It'll be quick questions and quick answers. Question number 1: what bit of technology, what tech product has had the biggest impact on the real estate business?
Ooh. That's a tough question. That's not
quick
a fast
questions,
question.
not so quick answers.
Any piece of tech? Are you talking any piece of technology anywhere?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, if Zillow didn't exist, we couldn't do what we do.
Fantastic. These are your answers, man. Like I want everybody to have their own gut instinct.
Gotcha.
Question number 2: what is the biggest mistake you've made with technology in your business?
Thinking technology would solve the problem, not that technology is simply a tool, and then you got to use your brain and the tool to solve the problem.
Fantastic. Question number 3, what's your best advice on how to integrate technology into your business if you're talking to someone new?
You have to really treat it like a newborn baby the first 90 days. Really be into it. If you or someone on your team can't be on it every day, you'll waste money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't agree more with that, actually. I used to tell people there's a 3-month curve before you start to embed something enough. And if you can't get over that 3-month curve, if you don't make a dedicated bit, then you're gone. The chances of you failing is very high.
Yeah, I'd say it's the same thing with a new employee.
Agree 100%. Question number 4. What is the one thing you wish you'd known about technology when you started the real estate business?
That it wouldn't just solve my problems, that I'd have to actually work with it. I wanted it to
You
be
mean
like
it's not a golden ticket?
I wanted it to be a magic pill or a golden ticket. Yeah.
Everybody wants that. Every time when I used to build CRMs, before I co-founded Smartphone, I built Podio CRMs for people.
Okay.
And it never failed. It would be like people would go, they'd come at it thinking, well, so this CRM basically is just going to make all my, I want it to make all my sales, close all my deals, and I want to spend no money on it, and I want to not have to do anything.
Or no time.
Like, well, yeah. If I knew how to do that, mate, I wouldn't be here right now. I would be on a beach somewhere.
That's a good point.
Final question: if someone was just starting out, particularly in maybe wholesaling, or holding, what are 3 technology products you would recommend they focus on first?
You probably know more about Salesforce than me, but is Salesforce any good when you're not really running a big operation?
I mean, it can be if you've got a system like Left Main.
Okay.
Because it's set up for you.
Yeah.
And there's functionality, and so if you only got one user, you've still got the capabilities.
Okay, so I would say some advanced CRM like Salesforce. I would say inbound calls, you have to have some technology to make sure a bomb goes off whenever you view a lead calling in. That's another great tip from Brewer is we're within 60 seconds. Either we're answering live or on them in 60 seconds. If we get a web form coming in, it's 60 seconds. And then third, probably accounting software, because if you start doing well and making money, you want to keep what you make.
I'll take it. Listen, Jimmy, fantastic, really interesting actually for me to hear about how you've been focused on the process, focused on the systems. I'm going to make sure that your links are put into the page. Please, everyone, hit Jimmy up. If there's social media, Jimmy, that you've got as well, I'll make sure that all of that is on the podcast. And I want to thank you so much for joining today, Jimmy. It's been a phenomenal pleasure for me to meet you and have a little chat with you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to another amazing episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. Head over to thatrealeestatetechguy.com to check out all episodes and get special discounts on tons of awesome real estate technology platforms.